Very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mir Misam from TYASuite. I look after for the automation part. Today, I welcome you everyone on this webinar for automating vendor MSME verification with TYASuite. Maybe one more minute. Okay, let's get started. Yeah. The primary agenda for today is we will be understanding on this call the rising MSME compliances landscape in India. Section 43 BH, what finance team needs to know. Challenges in traditional vendor MSME verifications. Impact of incorrect MSME classification. Why really the real-time MSME verification matters. And automating vendor MSME verification with TYASuite. We also have poll on this where you can help us out, where you can know how you are managing currently the MSME verification. Yes, Sneha, you can just put the poll.
Can you guide participants where they will see the poll? So on your screen, there will be a pop-up. The poll is live. You can click and you will see the poll, and you can just click and give your information on the poll.
Right side, you might have a pop-up where you see how is your organization currently verifying MSME status. You have options: manual, Udyam portal verification, vendor submits certificates, ERP spreadsheet tracking, or automated verification. Okay. I see 8 people have responded. Great. Maybe another 30 seconds. We'll just check. We have got almost 9 responses. Major of participants when submit certificate. Okay. They are submitting the certificate and it's manual process. We have one poll for manual Udyam portal verification and ERP spreadsheet. Currently, I have not seen anyone saying automated verification. That means everyone here who has joined, everyone's pain point is you are following with vendors, MSME. When you have to do the filing, you have sent hundreds of vendors emails and they are not getting any response. This is the reality that we have seen so far. Great. We have got almost 12 responses. Okay. 3 of them say manual Udyam portal verification. 8 of them have voted for vendor submitted certificate, and 1 is on ERP spreadsheet tracking. Okay. And we have 0 for automation. Okay. Then you are at the right place here. First of all, let me thank you everyone to taking up the time and joining this call. Okay. In this session, as we've already discussed the agenda, now let me just introduce the speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Vikas Mandayawala, founder, TYASuite Software Solution, TYASuite Accounting and Advisory. Vikas is a finance and technology entrepreneur with more than 25 years of experience, helping organization improve finance compliances, operation efficiency, and technology-driven automation transformation. Okay, he is gold medalist, chartered accountant, rank holder, CIA from US, CPA, CISA. Okay, in today's session, Vikas will be showing practically insights on how organizations can automate MSME verification, improve vendor master accuracy, and support compliances, and reduce all the manual effort. Okay, it's my pleasure introducing Vikas. Vikas, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mir. And thanks everybody for joining this afternoon. It's a wonderful to see all of you this afternoon. So today we are going to discuss basically what are the challenges faced by the finance team and the procurement team when they onboard the vendor, and more particularly in terms of MSME compliances. As Mir has presented, there are a couple of agenda points. Can you move on the slide? Yeah. So let's understand what are the rising MSME compliances landscape in India. If you see at a broad level, we have bifurcated the all MSME compliances into 5 different buckets. Okay. One is the MSME payment timelines, which is governed under the MSME Act. Tax deductibility under Income Tax Act, that is governed by Section 43BH. Outstanding reporting, MSME Form 1, that is under the Companies Act, where you have to file the forms. Vendor classification, that is more on the internal compliance perspective. And the tax audit, we have a Form 3CD, where we have to do the reporting. We have also listed down what are the impact for the non-compliances. Although at sight, it looks like the MSME compliances are not significant. But if you look at the non-compliances impact, you will realize that it's a very, very big thing. And we have seen the audits gets stuck because of this, because auditor want to put a qualification in your financial statement. And as a company management, you don't want to take a qualification. So we have seen audit gets delayed for a couple of weeks after everything is done, because the MSME verification was an issue. And at that point of time, then the client and the procurement team and the finance team has to run around the vendors, get the certification, get the reconfirmation done, and this delays everything in process. Okay, so MSME payment delays, you have RBI has the Government MSME Act has mandated that you have to pay interest 3 times the RBI interest rate. From the tax deductibility perspective, if the MSME payments are not done within the due date, then for that financial year, the expense itself can be disallowed. So this may have a disproportionate income tax exposure to the company, although in the next year, these expenses will be allowed on a payment basis, but it can derail the entire tax planning of the company. Then outstanding report, the MCA, the ROC wants half yearly filing with MCA on all the MSME compliances. And then vendor classification, you may end up incorrect classification within your company. And in the tax audit, Form 3CD has a clause where you have to report what are the MSME delays of the payments. Now, moving to the specific to Section 43BH, what finance team needs to know. Applicable to all the payments due to micro and small. So we have 3 categories of companies: micro, small, and medium. So this 43BH is more specific to micro and small enterprises registered under the MSME Act. Now, for this, it becomes very, very critical that you have the classification. Only knowing whether the vendor is MSME is not sufficient. You have to know what is their classification, and if they are micro and small, then you have a problem. Okay. Then payment within the agreed credit period not exceeding 45 days from the date of acceptance. Here also we have seen many companies doing error. It is not a blanket 45 days. Okay. So basically, if you have issued a PO or you have done an agreement with the MSME vendor, then the maximum time is 45 days as per the agreement. If there is no agreement or PO exists with the vendor, then the due date is not 45 days, due date is 15 days. So we have to be very, very mindful about this difference. And then there are no written agreement, we discussed about this. Then business impact. Expenses deduction may be deferred until the actual payment, that is under Income Tax Act. Potential impact on taxable income, increased compliance monitoring requirement, and greater focus on vendor classification accuracy. As I mentioned, if it is a micro and small, then only you have a lot of compliance issue. For a medium enterprises, there are less compliance issue. Okay. Now, let's see what are the challenges with traditional vendor MSME verification. Over the last 25 years, I have personally worked with 1,000+ companies, and most, I will say 99% of the companies, we have noted that they are relying on the vendor to submit the certificates, and then they will do the, they will rely on that certificate. Now, the problem with this method is that it's a purely manual. When at the time of vendor onboarding, you will get the certificate, you will rely on that certificate. However, the MSME category will keep changing on a quarter-on-quarter basis, year-on-year basis. New vendors may classify into the MSME, may shift the categories within MSME that we do not basically check. Okay. Then vendors often, so what is the normal manual process? Vendor will submit the outdated MSME certificate. We don't check what is the date of certificates. PAN and Udyam details may not match. Incomplete or duplicate documentation. Heavy dependency on emails, spreadsheets, and manual validation and follow-up with the vendor. Most of you must be doing every year. You will be sending an email to the vendor, send a reminder email to the vendor, ask them to resubmit their MSME, and that process will go on. Okay. Then what is vendor maintenance issue? Then MSME status may change over time without notification, because a vendor will not notify you that my status has changed. It is automatically based on their turnover. Okay. Vendor master records will not be updated properly, and no automated mechanism to monitor the status change. So these are the current reality of most of the companies who has not enabled MSME verification automation. Now, what are the impact of incorrect MSME classification? As we have noted in the previous slides, MSME, so we have categorized what are the top level non-compliances impact. One are the MSME Act non-compliances, Income Tax Act non-compliances, Companies Act non-compliances, audit qualification, and due diligence red flags. We have seen funding getting stuck due to MSME red flags. Okay. Income tax disallowances up to 34.94% for domestic companies and 43.68% for the foreign companies of the total MSME expenditure which are not paid on time. Interest payment exposure, 3x of the RBI interest rate, and litigation cost. Many MSME vendors may file a litigation for the delayed payment, and unnecessary this has a litigation cost on the company. Now, why real-time MSME verification matters? Now, let's look into that. What will happen if your MSME verification starts on a real-time basis? Instant MSME verification. While onboarding the vendor itself, you can just put their PAN number or MSME number. Just by putting the PAN number of the vendor, the entire verification process within a few seconds, the entire data gets verified, including the MSME classification. Real-time Udyam validation. Accurate vendor categorization into micro, small, and medium enterprises. Centralized compliance visibility. You will be able to monitor how many vendors are MSME, what is the frequency we have tested, what is the last date we have tested for MSME. All those things you will have a central visibility. And automated revalidation for MSME status and category. So depending on your company policy, depending on the number of vendors, you can run an automation every quarter, every year, every month, and system will automatically revalidate the MSME status as well as MSME category for that vendor without any manual effort. Okay. Now let's understand what kind of validation you can avail for MSME with TYASuite. Okay. So we have a PAN-based verification. The moment you will put a PAN number of the vendor, it will go and verify from multiple sources. There is no direct source of validation from PAN to MSME. So we have issued a service where you can just put a PAN number and MSME verification along with the Udyam number, enterprise category, all registration details and certificate information will be available to you. If you already have a Udyam number, then we also give you the registration status, enterprise category, and all business information about that vendor. Now, once it is done, then as I mentioned, every month, every quarter, every year, depending on your enterprise frequency, you will be able to auto revalidate the vendor MSME status and category. Now let's look at how the actual TYASuite software looks like. So the moment you will put the vendor PAN number, first you will get the MSME details as per MSME, whether this is an MSME vendor or not. If it is an MSME vendor, then what is the category? It is a micro, and what is the application date of the vendor, and what is the classification date when it was last classified. As I mentioned you, the classification can change anytime based on the various filing done by the vendor. Okay, so this classification year is the valid year for this classification. Okay, now let's deep dive into what all information we can give it to you through automation. We can give it to you MSME verification date, when is technically the MSME gets verified. Then what was the application date? What is the commencement date? Date of incorporation of the company. Then enterprise name and enterprise category. If you see, it is a micro enterprise. Okay. Then it will be what is the major activity of the company, location, then social category, state, and the full address, including the email ID. Yeah. And then you will also get the what is the classification date and classification year. So these are the full detail we are able to give you through automation without any manual effort. No need of sending emails to the vendor, no need of sending any reminders to the vendor, and your MSME compliance will be fully complied, and you as a finance leader can have a peaceful night every month. So if any questions now, we are open to questions from the participants. If you want to understand anything, you have any specific questions, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can raise your hands, or you can type your queries in the chat box. Okay, so one question has from Mr. Vijay Krishna. In case of no contract/PO, the payment due date is 15 days from the date of receiving the invoice or service acceptance. In case of monthly retainership services, vendor delays the issuing invoices, due date from the month end or date of receiving the invoices. So this is a very, very good question. So in case of no contract, the 15 days is from the receipt of services. Okay, so in that case, it's a recurring services. Then yes, whenever you have a month end, what you have agreed with the vendor, that becomes the date of receiving the service, because that is the month completion and when vendor is supposed to review the invoices, not the actual receiving the invoices. But due to practical difficulty, even the vendor invoice date can be treated as service acceptance date, because in case of various services, you can say that every performance obligation was not fulfilled by the month end, and hence on the invoice issue date, the performance was fulfilled and it is acceptable practice in the market. Okay, so the second question from Mukesh, how frequent is the classification check done? So classification check done technically should be done every quarter. Okay, because the vendor classification may have changed, and if you are not doing it quarterly, then it may raise a compliance issue later on. However, if you truly ask from the audit mitigation perspective, many auditor may be okay even if you do it annually. Any other questions? If any participant has any other question, you can ask the queries in the chat box, or you can raise your hands. We will give you an opportunity to talk also. Okay. So Nikita has raised a query. If the vendor has not reclassified or updated his MSME status, then his old status will be reflected. Yes. So many times vendor does the delayed filing of their financial statement. In that case, their MSME status does not get reflected. So whenever it gets reflected, you do not have to worry about the past. Okay, because this has no role to play by the company. It is on the vendor to file with the various government authorities so that they can update the MSME status. Okay. Now the question from Silendra Jain: payment due date is applicable from date of receipt or date of invoice. Okay. So there is okay. So the payment date of 15 days or 45 days applies from date of receiving the goods or services. Technically, the invoice date or the receipt date of the invoice has no relevance. Okay. However, as I mentioned, that in case of services, the invoice date can be easily taken as the receipt of service date. Okay. So when you are actually receiving the invoice actually has no relevance, and that is the reason many companies may ask the vendor to change the invoice date to the current date in case they receive the delayed invoices from the vendor. Yeah. So in case the invoice is received after 45 days of the goods receipt, okay, so in that case you have a technically a GRN date. Okay, so for all the compliance purpose, your GRN acceptance date, what is normally called the QC date, will be considered as the starting date for the MSME due date. So in this case, goods cases, you cannot technically go back to the vendor and ask them to change the GRN date, because GRN is raised by the company. Unless until you have a manual GRN, yes, you can change the GRN date. But if you have a system generated GRN, you are not able to change the GRN date as well. In that case, you may get stuck. So for the goods invoices, it is very, very critical that you track the GRN and do the compliances accordingly. Okay. Deepika has a question. In case we have any issue with the invoice, what will be the due date? Okay. So issue with the invoice means issue with the goods or services. So that is what you have to track, that the goods received is okay, but the QC should not be okay. So if the QC is not okay and you can prove that the QC is not yet done, then still you are safe from the compliance perspective. And on the services, as I mentioned, the invoice date is considered to be safe in the service side. So if you have any issue on the services, safe, because you will get a revised invoice from the vendor. Okay. So Subhadeep has a question. In case of service related invoices, will it be from the date of receiving of invoice in the company or invoice date? As I mentioned earlier, receiving date has no relevance in the entire compliance ecosystem. It will be considered the vendor invoice date only. Okay. Mukesh, another question from Mukesh. Practically, without the invoice, we cannot honor the payment though. Yes, you are right, Mukesh. And that is the reason, in case the invoice is received late by the vendor, many company you will see a policy that they will revert back to you and asking, giving the invoice with the current date. And we even at our company, many times we send the invoice to the customer, but they do not pay on time. And after 45 days, they come back to us asking that change the invoice date to the current date. And we have to do that because we have to maintain the relationship with the customer. Okay. Now another question from Shubhadeep. In case of service invoices, will it be from date of receiving or invoice in the company or invoice date? As I mentioned, in case of service, it must be invoice date. Date of receiving the invoice in your company technically has no matter, because invoice can stay in the email box of your team for 1 week, 10 days, 1 month. It does not matter. Another question from Shukanta. What if the invoice is delayed? Okay. So, Shukanta, can you clarify your question? What do you mean by invoice is delayed? Is this receiving the invoice delayed, or vendor has issued the invoice with delay? In the meantime, I will take another question from Malini. Is this retriggering the invoice with the current date a correct approach? Okay, this is a practical approach. There is no wrong or right approach. As I mentioned, for the service invoice, it is okay, and it is considered that the invoice date will be considered as a service delivery date. In that case, the only option remains is ask the vendor to revise the invoice to the current date. He will pass a credit note from the previous invoice and issue a fresh invoice to you with the current date, so that you don't fall into non-compliance under MSME. Okay, so another question from Mukesh. If the QC date crossed 45 days, which is recorded in the system, but no invoice received till 45 days, how do we comply in this scenario? So you have to be very, very tighter control in the company. If the QC has been done, then you have to ensure that you are following up with the vendor or your team, because most of the time, technically after GST, the goods gets delivered along with the invoices. So most of the time, the invoice will be stuck with your team somewhere in the factory, somewhere in the drawer, somewhere in the email. So you have to follow up with the team. You should have a strong ecosystem inside your company, that if the GRN and QC is done, invoice must be collected. Yeah, so if as I answered earlier question, Sukanta, if the invoice received by the companies with delay, that has no relevance. It will be for the services, it will be considered from the invoice date. Okay, so Nikita has a question. Will TYASuite platform help only for verification uploaded MSME status of vendor, or will also ensure end-to-end MSME compliances? So in our, we have two products. One is MSME verification, and then one is end-to-end AP management platform. So in the end-to-end AP management platform, you will get end-to-end compliances, including the interest calculation, including the reporting for the ROC compliances. But only for the MSME verification, it is a verification part. Okay, so Vijay has asked me what are the charges for TYASuite. The charges depends on various factors, like how many number of invoices you have, what is the frequency you want to verify, all those things. So I will have my team to reach out to you and understand your situation and give you a proposal for that. Is the waiver letter from MSME vendor in case of delayed payment applicable in the audit? The answer is technically no, because the MSME due dates are tracked by the act of the parliament. If the vendor is giving you a waiver, it is just from the perspective of that he does not want any interest from you and he want to continue the business with you. But from the compliance perspective, auditor will not agree. You have to accrue the interest in your financials, whether you pay it or not. Selendra has another question. With the entire module, can we track vendor invoice and payment date also? Yes. In the end-to-end AP management module, we have a product called Zero Touch. It's an AI-based AP automation module where you can manage everything from the due date, from the invoice verification and validation, and lot more. It's basically a zero touch invoice automation platform where with minimal human touch, you will be able to process your invoice with accuracy and fully compliant. So Nikita has a question. I believe your platform is connected to MSME portal through API, and from there you guys fetch the latest status. Is the understanding correct? Yes. So understanding is correct partially. So one is if you have a Udyam number, then yes, we directly fetch it from the MSME website. If you do not have a Udyam number, if you are verifying from the PAN number directly, then there is a different approach of verification. But ultimately, at end, yes, we verify the data from the MSME website through API, but not directly, because there is no direct linkage from PAN to MSME number. Shubhadeep has question, but in that case, if the vendor is not ready to revise the invoice and it's not our fault and we have received the invoice in delay and vendor is ready to provide a waiver letter, what to do in that case? You have to live with that non-compliances and try to convince your auditor not to put interest provision in the books. Otherwise, no other option. Okay, great. Any other questions, guys? Before we end this session, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me. If you want a real-time update, you can follow our company page on Facebook, on LinkedIn. You can send me a connection request on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to get connected with you guys. Okay, so thank you very much once again, everyone, for joining this session and staying till the last. Okay, that is most important. And if you guys have any further questions, feel free to email to our team and we'll be happy to answer your queries.
Yeah, sorry, just one last question.
Yeah, Vijay.
Mandatory to pay interest to the vendors, even though they are okay not taking it?
That's correct. So vendor not taking the interest is your relationship with the vendor, but MSME Act is very clear that you must pay to the vendor.
Okay, we have to pay even if the vendor doesn't want it.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Yes, please.
In case what we do it every year, we mail to the MSME vendors, which are recorded in our panel, in our system, and just to get a confirmation that you are still under the MSME Act, or you have registered, or you have deregistered yourself under MSME. Just confirm.
Correct.
We generally mail it because of the act of. But what happens? Maximum time we don't receive any feedback from the vendors. Maximum time. Say out of 10. Just an example, out of 10, we receive an confirmation of 2 to 3 vendors, and 7 or 8 vendors doesn't really revert. So in that case, it's written on the mail that if you are not reverting, we will consider that you are not under MSME anymore. So can we do it?
That is not. Yeah, that is not sufficient. So it is the responsibility of the company to find out whether the vendor is an MSME vendor or not.
So then what's the meaning of this mail? Just for accounting.
This mail has no meaning. Honestly, this mail has no meaning. It's just a waste of manual effort. And that is the primary reason we have come up with this automation, to ensure that the finance team and the AP team does not have to follow up with the vendors anymore. Just click of a button, you can verify the MSME status of the vendor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, if no other questions, guys, so thank you very much once again. Have a wonderful evening. Okay, I think Riddhi has some question. Okay. So Riddhi, so have you seen my query? 1 second. Riddhi, I think, did I miss your queries? Give me 1 second, Riddhi. In some delayed submission of the invoice case, as we as a recipient asked to vendor mention invoice submit date on the invoice and stamp sign, is it okay? The answer is no, that will not be okay. That is a workaround, but it will not be okay. Ask the vendor to revise the invoices if it is more than 45 days. If it is within 45 days, then you try to process the payment as soon as you receive the invoices. Okay. And as we recipient asked to vendor mention invoice submit date on the, okay, so no, so yeah, so I answered this question that no, this is not sufficient actually. Okay. And yeah, so my team will reach out to you, Nikita, and discuss about the proposal. Okay, great. So thank you very much once again, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye.